This video is brought to you by my supporters on Patreon. Hi guys, so I'm here with the first video in my Li-Ming work log series, and in this clip I am just cutting out and coming up with patterns right there. That rectangle bit was for the belt, and in this clip I'm working on her white skirt. For the purple skirt, I just cut out two large rectangles and then added a angle at the bottom. And for the jacket, I used a pattern that I already had for like a long time and altered it. To create the white skirt pattern, I'm using a reference photo, looking at that, drawing it out as best as possible, doing a kind of rough sketch to start with, and then I go over with a bunch of different colors until I finally settle on a pattern that I like. I end up going with the green markers outlining. I know it can be a little bit confusing, but this works for me. Once I have the pattern all planned out and cut out, I just transfer that to fabric. I use sewing pins to pin the pattern down onto the fabric, and I don't know if I mentioned this already, but if you couldn't tell, I used Christmas wrapping paper that had this graph on the back of it to pattern out my stuff, or like draw my patterns out on, because the grid on the back kind of helps me just make sure everything's even and the length that I need it to be, because each grid was 1 inch. So in this clip I am patterning out the design that is on the sleeve for the jacket, and I didn't get footage of what I'm about to explain, so that's why I'm going to explain it. All of the gold pieces are craft foam that is covered in this gold fabric from Yaya Han's line. So I would pattern out everything that I needed to be in gold and then cut that out in craft foam, and then spray that craft foam with spray adhesive and place it onto the fabric and kind of let that dry for a couple minutes, and then cut it out and leave some excess so I can fold it over the edges, which you will see in a little bit here, but I didn't get footage of me spraying it like I said like a minute ago. So this is the footage that I have of me folding down the edges on the gold pieces and kind of pinning them into place. Some of them I cut a little short, and it made it really hard to pin it down or like even sew it, so that the edges wouldn't be like raw and they'd be folded and look pretty. So for those edges that were really short, I used a glue gun to just glue down the edges on the sides since they didn't wrap around to the back. And just to clarify a bit more, by sides I mean the sides of the craft foam, because the craft foam is the thinnest one that I can find, but it still is thicker than a piece of paper or fabric, so it does need to have it like the fabric wrapped around it, or else you'll see the red or white poking out. For the belt, I did something a little different because I made the belt out of EVA foam completely and then wrapped the bottom part in black fabric and had to go through and attach the gold lining, and my sewing machine did not want to sew through 2 layers of craft foam, which makes sense because I didn't use any sort of needle that was meant for like thicker stuff. So instead I used a hot glue gun to just glue down all of the edges and glue the gold lining onto the belt. So everything here was just glued on, whereas for the rest of my costume, after I pinned all the gold pieces in place, I sewed through it because my sewing machine could sew through at least 1 layer of craft foam.
Take this ride together, and we can feel like this forever,
So that is all I got to record as far as this video goes for her clothing pieces and whatnot. But I will have future videos coming out for the rest of her costume. I just didn't really record much when I was sewing because it would be nothing but seeing clothing go through a sewing machine, and that can be a bit boring or just repetitive, whereas this was probably a little bit repetitive already. Anyways, I hope this helped some of you, or was interesting at least, and you check out my other Li-Ming work log videos because I have a lot coming on all of the different armor pieces. Alright guys, thanks for watching, have a lovely day.